rain poured down upon my body as I stumbled down the road, growls and snarls coming from all sides. I held my laptop close to my chest, doing my best to make my way through the dangerous streets of Evansville. I grunted, holding my arm close to my body as I clutched the laptop to my chest. When I was beaten aside by the pyromaniac I called Andrew, he must have done something to my arm. I held it close to me tightly, unable to move it in a certain way without being struck with immense pain. My leg was also in pretty bad shape, a large bloody scrape remaining on my ankle. I was forced to limp, the scrape beginning to burn whenever I bent my leg. I limped, and I limped, trying to survive as the mutants began to submerge on me. I looked to the left and watched as 3 turned their heads, rushing towards me. Despite their slow speed, they were almost as fast as me now. I wiped the tears from my eyes as I looked around for somewhere to hide. All the buildings in the neighborhood were torn apart, all except for one in the back, a party store of some sort. With all my might, I fought my way towards the party store, until finally my legs stepped into a crack in the street, and I felt myself falling forward. I hit the ground, my laptop clattering across the concrete. I managed to pull my foot out of the crack just as the mutants reached me, all of them ready to fight. I turned around, reaching for my gun as I crawled away from the 3. One fell forward on top of me, opening its mouth to tear it down into my neck. With one hand, I pushed its forehead back, and with the other I pulled my gun from my hoodie, the weapon slipping through my fingers and landing beside me. "Get off! Come on! Come on!" I shouted, trying to fend off the mutant. I reached down, grabbing the revolver and pulling the trigger. The revolver let off a blast, the bullet tearing through the mutant's skull. Its body fell limp on top of me, and I quickly realized how much of a mistake I had made. The other 2 monsters stumbled towards me, and I was unable to escape with the other mutant's body on top of mine. I tried to push it off, but my fractured arm was unable to move it even an inch. It didn't take long for me to realize I wouldn't be able to run this time. I raised my revolver, unloading the other 5 bullets upon the mutants. One of them fell limp upon taking a bullet to the head, but the other 4 missed completely. The last one fell on top of the first body, slashing downwards at me. Blood splattered across my face, and for a second I thought I was dead. When I opened my eyes, I saw the mutant's claws stabbed not into me, but the head of the first mutant's body. I tried to tear its claws from its companions' bodies, but it wouldn't budge. I took the opening, reaching down to my hoodie for something useful. However, all I found was a USB stick with my games saved onto it for safekeeping. The mutant above me tore its claws from the other mutant's skull, but before it could attack again, I acted. I instinctively stabbed the USB upwards into the mutant's eye, the metal plug-in piece digging deep into its head. Blood burst from the wound as I twisted the USB, causing the mutant to scream out in pain. With all my might, I pushed the USB deep into its skull, and the creature died in my arms. I let out a breath of relief, both my arms falling at my sides. When I turned my head to look at the USB, I groaned upon seeing the crumpled up piece of metal between my fingers. Before we headed on the road, I made sure to download each and every game I knew I'd ever want to play. And with a single motion, they were all destroyed. Sorry, Mario. Slowly, I pushed the mutants off of me, their bodies slumping to the side as the rain washed the blood off of them and into the puddles below. I groaned, rolling over as blood trickled through the concrete and into the storm drain a few feet away. I stood up and stepped into the party store, closing the automatic doors before eyeing the darkened building. We had one of these stores back in Greenbrook, I thought to myself, but it looks nothing like this. The store was dark, the formerly happy vibe it usually gave off gone. The wall that formerly displayed balloons was now barren of color. The bins of candy in the middle of the store were overturned, and each and every morsel taken. Even the piñatas hung from the ceiling were destroyed, all of them torn apart and knocked onto the ground. Who the hell would raid a party store? I asked myself. I took a few steps deeper into the store, holding my arm close to my body as I did so. My heart was racing and my senses were heightened. At any point I could be attacked, and without the others, I was exposed and worried. But most of all, I was scared. Beep, beep, like a sheep. I said, beep, beep, like a sheep. Something rustled in the corner, and I raised my revolver instinctively, pointing it into the darkness. However, I couldn't see what was there. I took a few steps back before stuffing my revolver back into my hoodie, pulling out my Game Buddy instead. I powered it on, activating the flashlight. A bright light shined upon the corner of the store, and I eyed not a monster, but a cat sitting on the floor. I couldn't help but smile through my tearful and puffy eyes. "Meow to you too, kitty," I said, kneeling down and patting the cat on the head. It walked past me and down a dark aisle where the costumes were held. I stared down the alleyway, watching as the cat disappeared into the shadows. I gulped, raising my Game Buddy as I followed it into the darkness. Water dripped down from the ceiling, creating a large puddle on the floor. I stepped through the puddle, shining the Game Buddy on the walls and floors. To my left were several aisles leading back to the front of the store, and on my right were costumes hung on display for people to see. I shined my light on the wall of costumes and jumped! My Game Buddy falling from my hand. I fumbled to catch it, nearly dropping it into the water. I then raised it again, eyeing the mask I had been scared of. A large, blue, animatronic head of some sort of animal. It looked like something out of Chuck E. Cheese, but on steroids and so much worse. "Hey, kitty! Where'd you go?" I asked, my voice shaking as I spoke. The cat meowed again, and I moved towards the voice, desperate not to lose it. I shined the light towards the cat, watching as it stepped over a rack of weapons and then suddenly stopped in its path. I raised my Game Buddy, gasping as I came face to face with... It snarled at me and stumbled forward, the cat darting past me in the other direction. I dropped my Game Buddy, the device clattering to the floor as... I grabbed its arms, holding it away as it snapped at my neck, desperate for blood. I grunted, shoving it aside into a shelf as I fell against the weapons rack. The mutant banged its head against the shelf, and several cans of spray paint fell to the ground. It didn't stun the mutant for long, and before I knew it, the creature was back on its feet. I reached into the weapons rack and began digging for something to save me as it moved towards me. I eventually settled on a large black scythe reminiscent of the Grim Reaper. I turned around, swinging the plastic scythe and bashing the mutant in the head. And I let out a battle cry as I stabbed the handle of the scythe into the mutant's eye and deep into his brain. I cried out, driving the handle deep into its skull. The mutant's body fell limp and I tore the scythe from its body, tossing the bloody weapon aside. I stood there, breathing heavily until something... I turned around, watching as a mutant banged against the door relentlessly. I picked up the scythe and ran across the room, gasping as I spotted my laptop outside. I had dropped it when I had come in, and it was still out there. I needed to get it. I readied myself before opening the door, letting the mutant inside. I swung the scythe, the plastic blade snapping off when it hit the mutant's head before rushing towards me. I gasped, diving behind a bin. The mutant toppled the bin over, spilling balloon weights across the ground. As the creature began to creep toward me, I looked around for a weapon. I grabbed one of the balloon weights before climbing to my knees, slamming the weapon against the mutant's skull. The weight smashed into the side of the creature's face, covering the polka dot wrapped bag of sand and blood. I swung a second time, angrily slamming the weight into its eye. The weight burst open, and I turned my head to see a second mutant. I rushed to the door and slammed it just as the mutant banged against the door. I fell backwards, splashing down into the puddle of water as two more mutants joined. My lip quivered as I stared up at them hopelessly. What was I supposed to do now? How was I gonna survive? Who was I supposed to be? I tried to ask myself those questions, hoping to give myself an answer that would lead me on the path to victory. But I got nothing. I was supposed to be with my friends. I couldn't survive on my own. And who was I? I was a coward. And I still am. And I always will be. I'm sorry. I cried to myself, tears streaming down my face. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Everything was my fault. So many things could have been prevented if only I acted. If I had gone out there with Anakin and Andrew to fight those bandits, maybe Quinn wouldn't have been shot. If I hadn't gone back from my game buddy, maybe Hunter wouldn't have gotten infected. And if I had given up my life instead of Hunter, everything would be better. Andrew would be rid of me. Hunter would be alive. And Maddie, would she be happier without me? This entire journey, I've been distracted. I've been treating it like some anime. Like in the end, we're all gonna pull through with some Deus Ex Machina or come back with a second life. But this was the real world. Not an anime or a video game. She was supposed to be my girlfriend. And what had I done so far? Sit in the corner and play my damn video games until she forced me to put it down whenever someone made an announcement. I was treating her more like a babysitter than a lover. I'm sorry, Maddie. I whispered to myself. I'm sorry, Hunter. I'm sorry, Andrew. I'm sorry, Mom, Dad, Lance. I was a disgrace. I treated my girlfriend like shit, let my best friend give his life for me, and insulted my family after leaving them for dead. So I laid there on the floor, water dripping from the ceiling on my body. I cried and I cried, tears streaming down my face until I drifted off to sleep, unable to cry anymore.
Hey guys, come on, let's go on the Ferris wheel!
I'm gonna stay down here. You guys go up ahead.
Come on, Anakin, don't be such a pussy.
Spencer, look. That teddy bear is so cute.
Does anyone have a few bucks?
Please, you think you can win one of those?
I opened my eyes, staring forward at the game buddy lying on the ground. The screen had turned on, and a video was playing. It was a recording I saved onto there from last summer, when the 8 of us went to the fair. Me, Anakin, Andrew, Maddie, Space, Quinn, Lewis, and Hunter. My past self scoffed at Andrew, shooting him a glare.
You wanna bet?
I'd never pass up a chance at beating you at something.
Past Andrew replied, shaking my past self's hand. I watched the recording quietly, the memories flooding back to me all at once. That day was one I regard as one of my favorites.
I won!
Past me shouted in victory, punching his fist into the air. The man handed my past self the large teddy bear, and I handed it to Maddie, who giggled as she hugged the bear tightly. Andrew sighed, ruffling my past self's hair playfully.
Guess I can be wrong. Sometimes.
Lewis then pointed towards something else off camera.
Hey look, they got snow cones!
Anakin, Lewis, Space, and Andrew ran off to the truck at top speed. Past Spencer and Maddie giggled and smiled at each other until Hunter stepped in between them, resting his arms on their shoulders as they followed the others toward the snow cones.
Well, I suppose I could use a snow cone as well.
Quinn commented before the video ended. past him having stuffed the Game Buddy away. I smiled faintly, sniffling as I wiped my nose. That life I saw in that picture is what I wanted. I didn't want to spend every day fighting with Andrew or treating Maddie like nothing. I didn't want to keep running either, or have to fight off mutants every time I woke up. I wanted a life we could all spend together, forever, without worries or cares. And to do that, I would have to fight for it. I slowly stood up, clenching my teeth as I bent my leg to stand upwards. I grabbed onto the side of the shelf to hold me up, and I turned around, eyeing the 3 mutants outside. None of them were getting out alive. Quickly, I formulated a plan. I limped down each of the aisles, gathering my materials one by one. First, a bag where I placed my Game Buddy, my empty revolver, and some bags of candy I found at the bottom of the overturned bins. I then rushed to the costume section, snatching up one outfit and swapping clothes in the changing room. I stuffed my hoodie and sweatpants into my bag before reaching for one of the shelves, picking up a roll of gray duct tape. I began wrapping the duct tape around my arms, from my wrist all the way down to my elbows, before doing the same to my ankles for protection. I then stomped towards the weapons section, pulling a sword off one rack and a shield off the other, also taking a plastic scythe I attached to my back. After gearing up, I stepped towards the door, the morning light glistening onto my outfit. I wore a black ninja outfit with a blue belt, scarf, and headband. A bandana covered my face, and duct tape lined my arms and ankles, keeping most of my exposed skin protected. It wasn't heavy duty, but like some famous guy once said, every second counts. I approached the door, glancing to the side to see the cat sitting on the counter licking its paw. I smiled at it before sliding the door open with my foot, stepping back. The 3 mutants stumbled in. I then swung the plastic sword, knocking the mutant aside. The creature growled, taking the minor hit before diving at me. I held my sword out defensively, and the creature chomped down onto the blade. Almost instantly, the blade melted off the hilt, leaving me with a chunk of melted plastic. I cursed at it before stomping down onto its skull, crushing its head after 3 hits. I felt nauseous for a brief moment. The first mutant went for me again, and I dodged, slipping between its defenses. I grabbed a Father's Day mug off the wall and smashed it against the shelf before stabbing the sharp chunk of ceramic into its head. Its body fell limp, and I pushed it aside, dropping the ceramic shards in the process. The 3rd mutant then charged at me, shoving me against the shelf. I fell back against it, trying to hold the creature away. I turned around, looking for another weapon. I realized I was out of options. Come on! I'm not! I tried to hold it off, but my strength was fading. For a moment, I thought I was dead. And then my savior came, in the form of a 4-legged fluffy feline. The mutant broke away as the cat landed on the ground, scurrying underneath the weapons rack. I took the chance to run towards the register, hopping over the counter and landing on the floor. The mutant began to climb over as well, but before it could, I noticed a handgun hiding beneath the counter. I grabbed the gun and rose back up, blowing its brains out onto the wall with a single gunshot. Its head jerked back and the creature fell to the floor, dead in an instant. I took a few deep breaths, smiling before looking down at the gun and asking myself, how long was this here? I fled the store, my bag in hand and the cat right behind me. The 2 of us rushed back to the house, only to find it abandoned. He couldn't have gone far, I thought to myself. The 2 of us hopped into a nearby car, but found the keys gone. However, we wouldn't need it. I opened up the electronics, fumbling with a bundle of wires until the car powered to life.
Now, connect this wire to the red wire, and this one to the pink wire. Then take this other wire and press it against this thing, the green wire.
Thank God I listened to Hunter for once, I said to the cat. The fluffy creature simply stared back at me, confusion apparent on its face. I sped down the road, using the very little experience I had driving cars in virtual reality to keep myself from crashing. I found my way onto the highway south, hoping to find the RV stopped somewhere ahead. And when I did, I wished I hadn't. Several cop cars sped past me on the highway, overtaking the speed limit by 30. For a minute, I thought to myself, why were the cops all the way out here? There's no town for miles. And then I remembered we were wanted. The police were after us. And with all the commotion we made in Evansville, if they were watching, they knew where we were. The others were in trouble. What do you think? I asked the cat. Should I help them? I sighed, patting it on the head. You're so dumb, but I love you anyways. I continued to drive down the highway, a large incident coming into sight. A plethora of cop cars were stopped in the middle of the abandoned highway, right beside a smoking RV overturned in the road. I could see several people outside, some cops and some prisoners. If I go down, you run, okay, Deku? Run and never look back, I told the cat as I slowly pressed down on the gas pedal. I looked to the side at the revolver and pistol sitting in the cup holders.
Alright, 6 shots inside the chamber. Pull the release to open it up, and press that thing to release the bullets. And remember, never put your finger on the trigger unless there's an enemy in front of you. And if there is, don't hesitate.
I braced for impact, aiming the pistol out the window and firing at the cops ahead of me. 2 went down, and the others scattered. Anakin and the others running as well. The truck I was in then slammed into the side of a cop car, crushing another 2. As 2 cops opened fire at my truck, I slipped out the side and rolled underneath the vehicle. 3 cops rushed to the car with their guns drawn, only to see Deku sitting in the passenger seat. They lowered their guns, staring in confusion at the cat, until I peeked out from beneath the car and killed all 3 with shots to the head.
Everyone take cover! Don't come out if they're shooting at you!
Andrew's words echoed through my mind as I rolled out from underneath the car. Gunshots echoed throughout the maze of police cars, and I crept through it all, my gun drawn and ready. I only had the 1 clip, so I had to make every shot count. It wasn't until another cop drew his gun on me, and I shot him in the heart, that I realized that I could loot their bodies too. I stared through a cracked window, watching as Andrew ducked down beneath a cop car, rolling underneath the vehicle as a cop fired at him with his pistol. I grabbed a fallen officer's shotgun and raised the weapon, blowing the enemy's chest apart with a single shell. A shotgun blast then fired in my direction, shattering the window I had been looking through. I looked out to see Octavia running across the maze of police cars, her cuffs broken and sword drawn. 1 cop fired at her, but she dodged, picking a pistol up off the ground and firing rapidly in the officer's direction. She unlocked the car holding Ryan and Kaylee, letting them escape into the woods. But as a cop approached her with a shotgun drawn, she swung her blade and cut him down. He fired into the air twice before he went down, the shock of the gunshot stunning Octavia enough that she didn't react fast enough to another officer behind the first one. He grabbed Octavia, shoving her against the hood of a car. Octavia dropped her sword and the cop grabbed her arm, yanking her off the ground and forcing her against the police car. She was trapped.
Hold your fire or she dies.
The officer shouted. I looked in his direction, watching as he held his gun against the head of Octavia, tears streaming down her face. I rushed out, gunning down one of the last cops as I snuck towards the one holding Octavia down. He turned his gun to shoot at me, but I rushed forward, grabbing the gun. The 2 of us wrestled for control, and the words of Quinn Navarro came to mind.
If you cannot be stronger, be smarter.
I pulled the trigger 3 times on the weapon, the surprise giving me the chance to rip it out of his grasp. The officer gasped as I gunned him down, shooting him 3 times in the stomach. I then grabbed Octavia and took cover, crouching down as the last cop approached us.
If something tries to kill you, never hesitate to shoot.
The cop raised his gun, but I was faster. I raised my own gun, firing my final bullet at him. The shot broke apart the officer's pistol, tearing it apart in his hands. Before he could react, I bashed his head in with the pistol, slamming it down into his head several times until my hands were covered in blood.
Hey!
I looked up to see Anakin with his Colt Python raised, blood trickling down from his forehead. But when he got a closer look, his grip loosened. I pulled off the bandana and gave them a sheepish smile as I stuffed my empty pistol into my pocket. I see you guys got far.